They told a black man to play piano as a joke. What happened next shocked everyone. A black man played Chopin in a Chicago subway. Within hours, the world calls him a miracle. But where was the world when they silenced him at 16? This isn't about music. It's about a country that hears black brilliance only after trying to crush it. Now he plays back louder. Southside Chicago doesn't sing. It groans. Concrete cracks underfoot. Steam hisses from vents. Sirens wail without reason, like ghosts chasing nothing. The city moves on anyway, hard and fast, too busy to care what it crushes beneath its weight. And down in the guts of Station 52, one of the oldest and most neglected subway stops in the city, there's a piano. Not in a theater, not behind velvet ropes, but there, wide open in a public space, like a dare. Most people don't notice it. Most passers-by assume it's broken, or stolen, or just out of place. But 5 nights a week, just past rush hour, that piano becomes a mouthpiece for something this city has tried to silence for generations. His name is Michael, 22, black. No stage name, no sponsorship, no label. Just a hoodie, a scarred pair of boots, and fingers that strike the keys like they're breaking chains. He doesn't play to entertain. He plays because it's the only way to keep from screaming. His music isn't pretty. It's not soft or sentimental. It's jagged, fierce, full of wrong notes that still feel right, full of pain that never quite resolves. You don't clap when Michael plays. You listen or you leave. He sits at that old beat-up piano, half the keys chipped, the wood splintered like old bones, a gift from some charity trying to bring art to the people. Most of those pianos got tagged and trashed. This one survived. Maybe because it found someone just as stubborn. Michael doesn't speak much. He lets the music speak for him. And when it does, it speaks in a language only the broken understand. People walk past him like he's part of the infrastructure, like the gum on the floor or the cracked tiles on the wall. A white woman clutches her purse tighter. A transit cop stares too long. A businessman tosses a quarter and says, "You've got talent, kid. Shame it's wasted down here." Michael doesn't flinch. He's heard it all before. That same man, in a different suit, with a different face, told him 5 years ago that he was too intense for conservatory life, that his attitude made teachers uncomfortable, that his brilliance came with baggage. He got accepted into the best music school in the state, played Chopin by ear, wrote original compositions before he was old enough to drink, and they cut him loose like expired milk. No scandal, no hearing. Just silence. Paperwork vanished. Recommendations pulled. They didn't ruin his name. They just made sure no one would ever say it again. Now he scrubs tires and windows for cash during the day. At night he comes here, to this piano, not to chase applause, but because music is the only place that still feels like home. Tonight, he's playing something new, a piece that's been stuck in his chest for months. It has no name. He started writing it the day his grandmother, Miss Ebony, got her diagnosis. Heart failure. No insurance. No savings. Just her and Michael, trying to hold each other together. The piece starts low. Slow. Like a heartbeat fading under hospital lights. Then it builds. Sharp. Unforgiving. It crashes like fists against locked doors. Like voices shouting in courtrooms no one listens to. It is not a melody. It is a reckoning. A transit cop walks by, hand resting casually near his holster. Doesn't say a word. Doesn't need to. Michael knows the dance. He's played it since he was 12, too tall, too loud, too black for comfort. But he keeps playing, not in defiance, in survival. Across the platform, a girl watches. Young, white, or maybe biracial, hard to tell. Cold hands wrapped around a handheld camera. Her name is Megan. She's a journalism student working on a documentary about the sounds of the city. She came to record train noise. What she finds instead is a man turning trauma into music under flickering fluorescent lights. She doesn't interrupt, doesn't ask questions. She just films. She doesn't know that in 48 hours that video will go viral. 6 million views, thousands of comments. People arguing, praising, condemning, dissecting. Most won't understand what they're hearing. Most will miss the point. Because Michael wasn't looking to be discovered. He wasn't performing for them. He was surviving. And now, the world is finally listening, whether it wants to or not. Because some stories don't wait for permission. Some music doesn't ask for your approval. And some voices, when they've been ignored long enough, come back louder than the world is ready for. This isn't inspiration. It's confrontation. And it starts with a piano no one expected to matter, played by a man no one wanted to see. Michael doesn't know she's recording. He wouldn't care if he did. He's not here to be remembered. He's here because this is the only place left that doesn't tell him to shut up. The streets outside don't listen. The city only notices when your name ends up on a police report or an obituary. In here, beneath the concrete, under the rumble of trains and the buzz of broken lights, this old piano is the one thing that never judged him. When Michael plays, time warps. You can't tell if it's 2025 or 1965. His music feels like it's been trapped in the bones of this city since it was redlined and broken. It's the sound of black ambition fenced in and forgotten. It's church and jail and protest and silence all rolled into one sound that won't sit down and behave. It was Miss Ebony who first taught him what music meant. She used to hum old hymns while cooking greens in the tiny apartment where she raised him. He remembers her voice, thin but strong, never missing a note. She told him, "Baby, the world don't always love your voice, so make sure your music speaks louder than their fear." She saved up for years to buy him a second-hand keyboard. When the power got shut off, they lit candles, and he kept practicing in the dark. She clapped after every song like it was the Grammys. That woman has more soul in her pinky finger than every boardroom in this city combined. And now, she's lying in a hospital bed, tubes in her arms, bills stacking higher than rent. She never asked for anything but peace. Michael can't give her that. So he gives her this. He closes his eyes and shifts into the second movement, quieter, slower, but no less urgent. The sound floats, lighter than air, but full of weight. It's the part of the story where the hero almost gives up, where he walks away, where the system wins. But Michael doesn't write those kinds of endings. He's rewriting the script in real time. Every time his fingers find a new chord that refuses to resolve neatly, a child stops to listen. His mother pulls him away. Two teenagers mock the scene with fake applause, but they stop when they realize no one else is laughing. The room bends inward. The station's no longer just a stop on the red line, it's a cathedral. And Michael's the preacher no one knew they needed. This isn't just music. It's memory, resistance, and a dare to feel something real in a world that spent decades pretending black pain is either dangerous or distant. Megan, still behind her camera, forgets to breathe. She's not filming a street performer anymore. She's witnessing something sacred, something that doesn't belong in tourist brochures or university lectures. This is a man with no spotlight who made his own stage. She'll go home tonight with raw footage she can't stop replaying. But she won't post it yet. Not until she talks to him. Not until she asks what no one's bothered to ask. And Michael, he finishes the piece not with a bang, but with a sigh. The final note lingers like a secret. He doesn't stand, doesn't bow. He just sits there, fingers still, chest rising and falling like a man who just survived a war no one saw. He doesn't know yet what's coming, that the video will explode, that strangers will call him gifted, brilliant, political, dangerous. That debates will rage about talent and trauma and who deserves to be heard. He doesn't know that some will say he's the next big thing, while others demand to know why a hood pianist is getting so much attention. All Michael knows is that his grandmother is still in that hospital bed, and tomorrow he'll be back at Station 52, playing for her, playing for himself, playing because some stories don't get written unless you carve them into the keys with your bare hands. Nobody noticed her at first. The girl with the camera, white, mid-20s, dressed like someone who owns a Patagonia jacket and student loan debt. Her name was Megan, senior at University of Chicago. She was supposed to be documenting ambient noise for a capstone project. The plan was to catch the sounds of the city most people ignore: crosswalk beeps, bike bells, pigeons fluttering off broken glass. Not this. What she caught instead was a black man pouring 20 years of grief, hunger, and fury into a piano nobody wanted, and she didn't move. Not for 15 minutes. Not until he played the last note like it was a full stop on a life story nobody asked him to tell. She didn't clap. She didn't speak. She just pressed record. That night, she posted the video with a caption so short it was practically a whisper. You've ignored him for years. He never needed your permission. Then she went to sleep. 6 hours later, the internet was on fire. By sunrise, the video had crossed 7 million views. By lunch, it had caught the attention of 3 news anchors, 2 music blogs, and 1 political commentator who wrote, I don't know who this man is, but I want him on my show. And by dinner time, it was war. Comments rolled in like an avalanche. He's brilliant. Where's his GoFundMe? He deserves a Grammy. But then came the rest. Let me guess he's got a criminal record. If he's that talented, why is he playing in a subway? I smell a PR stunt. This ain't real struggle. And there it was. The American condition. Love a black man once he's poetic, broken, tragic, but only if he stays in his lane. Only if his rage is melodic, not messy. Only if his genius doesn't make anyone uncomfortable. Megan watched the comments multiply. She turned off notifications after the 47th message asking her to manage him. One message just read, bet he's another George Floyd waiting to happen. She threw her phone across the room. That night, she went back to Station 52. She didn't bring a camera. She brought a bottle of water and her own trembling conscience. Michael was there, as if the world hadn't changed overnight. She sat down on the cold concrete bench across from him, waited. When he stopped playing, she said, they know who you are now. He didn't answer. They're calling you a symbol. Some of them think you're a fraud. Some think you're the second coming of Baldwin. Others want to put you on Ellen. Still nothing. Then, finally, took them long enough. And of course, they're mad about it. She nodded. I didn't mean for it to blow up. I just thought people should hear you. Michael looked her in the eye. Calm, but not kind. They don't want to hear me. They want to use me, then discard me, just like last time. Megan asked quietly, what was last time? He paused. Then, I played at a fundraiser when I was 17. Private school crowd. One of the big donors cornered me backstage, asked if I'd ever considered going professional, as in tap dancing for guilt money. I said no. Next week, my scholarship was, we're evaluated. She closed her eyes. Of course, she should have known. There's always a last time. Always a first wound nobody sees. 2 days later, a Chicago music professor reached out. He wanted Michael to perform at a university showcase. New voices of the city. There would be donors, media, faculty, a celebration of undiscovered talent. Michael asked what they'd pay. They offered exposure. Michael said no. Megan said, what if it was on your terms? He raised an eyebrow. You play what you want. Say what you want. No stage lights, just you and the piano, and no introduction. He thought for a long moment. Then, only if my grandmother can come. Megan arranged a car. A nurse. A front row seat. The night of the showcase, Michael showed up wearing the same hoodie, same boots, no cologne, no press photo. Just a memory in his pocket and a chip on his shoulder. Miss Ebony was wheeled in 5 minutes before it began. Oxygen tank humming. Sharp eyes scanning the room like a general. Michael walked on stage. Didn't nod. Didn't speak. Saturday, he played. The first notes landed like shrapnel. But before the second verse, someone stood up in the crowd. It was a white man in a navy suit, clutching a wine glass. He shouted, this is your rising star. A subway performer in rags. This is performance art now. Gasps. A few laughs. One woman tried to shush him. He stepped forward. This isn't art. This is emotional manipulation. Michael stopped playing. Silence. He stood up, walked to the mic, looked the man in the eye, and said, you paid to feel good. I came here to tell the truth. Sorry they don't match. The room held its breath. Michael sat back down. He played the rest of the piece with no mercy. Afterward, the press wanted statements. The university issued an apology for the disruption. The man was escorted out, but not arrested. Of course not. Megan's inbox exploded again, but this time it was different. He faced him down. That last line, legendary. He didn't flinch, but the comment that stuck most came from a retired black veteran in Milwaukee. I was at the March on Washington. I heard Dr. King live, but I never cried until tonight. Michael didn't post a thing. He went back to Station 52 the next night, sat down at the piano. Same old bench, same cracked keys. But this time there was a line, 15 people deep, and for the first time in 2 years, someone else sat beside him. A young boy, 7, maybe 8, brown skin, nervous hands. Michael slid over on the bench, pointed to the keys. Your turn. Michael didn't ask for the headlines. He didn't need the praise or the poetry that poured in after his subway performance made its rounds. The standing ovation at the university showcase meant less to him than the quiet nod from his grandmother as she watched from the front row, dressed in a coat 3 decades old, but holding herself like a queen. Miss Ebony had always known he was meant for more, but she also knew the cost of being extraordinary in a world built to punish you for it. When he saw her sitting there, oxygen tube in her nose, but eyes still razor sharp, it reminded him why he played in the first place. Not for fame, not for forgiveness, for survival. He thought the attention might fade in a few days, that people would move on to the next viral spectacle, but they didn't. Instead, the noise grew louder, more invasive. They started calling him the voice of a generation, as if generations hadn't been screaming already. Labels came fast: prodigy, prophet, troublemaker. He became everyone's symbol overnight, and that was the problem. People loved what he represented more than who he actually was. He wasn't an idea, he was a man. Then came the offers. One from a media executive who handed him a contract wrapped in compliments. 6 figures, tour dates, a Netflix special. The man's teeth were too white, his voice too smooth. America needs this, he said. You're the story they've been waiting for. Michael didn't touch the paper. He looked him in the eye and said, America's been writing this story since they stole my grandfather's piano and called it progress. The man blinked, confused. Excuse me? Michael didn't repeat himself. He just left. Soon after, local news stations started digging. A former teacher said Michael had been emotional and difficult, that he didn't take feedback well. Another anonymous source described him as hostile, the kind of man who might have had greatness if he hadn't been so angry. Megan saw the smear campaign unfold like clockwork. She'd seen it before. Praise turns to suspicion when a black man speaks without smiling. The media loves a struggle if it ends in a speech, not if it ends in silence and sovereignty. Then a video surfaced from years ago. Michael, age 19, being handcuffed by 2 officers outside a gas station. No context, no charges, just grainy footage and loud opinions. People demanded answers. Is he really who we thought he was? Does this change how we should see him? Michael said nothing. He let the footage speak for itself. He'd been silent during that arrest too, jaw tight, eyes ahead. The clip was old, but the message was timeless. We trust your talent until we don't. An invitation arrived next. A national awards show wanted him to perform. Prime time, major network. They even said he could play anything he wanted. Freedom of expression, they said, like it were a gift. They offered $75,000 for 4 minutes of music. Michael declined, politely but firmly. I don't belong on your stage, he told them. I already have one. The network executive tried to persuade him. This isn't just about you. It's about progress. Michael replied. Then maybe find someone who still believes in it. But it didn't stop there. The spotlight turned hotter. Journalists called his landlord, asked about his rent history. A popular podcast hinted that his story had been over-sensationalized. One anchor implied that Michael's silence was a red flag. Megan received threats, emails telling her to go back to filming squirrels and stop pushing an agenda. They didn't care that she hadn't spoken publicly in days. Her name was now attached to his, and guilt by association is always in style when the subject is black and unapologetic. Then Michael vanished. He stopped showing up at Station 52. His number stopped working. Even Megan didn't know where he was. Rumors spread rehab, jail, breakdown, but none were true. Michael was at a condemned church on 63rd and Woodlawn, sitting on a cracked pew in front of a ruined piano. No strings, no sound, just dust and silence. He stared at it for hours, not playing, just remembering. This was the place his grandfather had taught his mother to play, before the fire, before the foreclosure, before silence replaced worship. Megan found him there on the 5th day. She didn't say much, just sat beside him and waited. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. They want me polished, manageable, marketable. Megan nodded. They want you to smile when you bleed. Michael looked down at his hands. I don't want to be the hero in their story. I don't trust their endings. Megan placed her phone on the pew between them. Then write your own. So he did. Michael returned to Station 52 the next Friday night. No announcements, no flyers, just a time. 8 p.m. Megan was there. So were hundreds of others. Some brought signs. Some brought candles. Some brought nothing but questions. A few brought microphones, hoping for a quote. He ignored them all. He sat down at the piano and closed his eyes. Then he opened them and stood. He didn't play. Not yet. Instead, he spoke. He said, I never asked you to listen. I never asked to be seen. But since I have your attention, I need you to understand something. The crowd quieted. You could hear the hum of the station lights overhead. You don't get to choose which parts of me you love. You don't get to praise my pain and ignore the rage behind it. I'm not your breakthrough. I'm not your background music. I'm what happens when you ignore brilliance long enough for it to become its weapon. Then he sat down, and he played. The music wasn't gentle. It didn't invite you in. It dared you to stay. It was sharp, discordant, and angry. And then, suddenly, it wasn't. It softened. It wept. It remembered. It danced. Every note was a contradiction, because so was he. And as he played, people stopped recording. Phones dropped. Heads bowed. Some wept. Others stared. Not one person moved. When he finished, he didn't stand. He didn't bow. He looked into the crowd and said only this. I played so no one could ever say they didn't know. Then he left, not with security, not with applause, just with purpose. And that was more powerful than anything the industry could offer. Michael had never played for glory. Not when he was a boy learning piano on cracked keys in his grandmother's living room. Not when he played in the subway surrounded by rats, cold air, and the smell of engine grease. And not now that the world wanted a show, a stage, and a version of him that smiled on cue. He had played to survive, to speak, to stay human in a country that tried to strip the sound from his soul. After the showcase and the chaos that followed, silence became his sanctuary. He turned off his phone, declined every offer. Labels wanted him for his raw authenticity. News channels wanted sound bites. Donors wanted photos. The same system that had dismissed him as invisible now wanted to dress him up like a trophy. But Michael didn't want their applause. Applause was easy. What he craved, what he demanded, was understanding. In those quiet days, he sat often with Miss Ebony. She didn't speak much, just watched him with the kind of gaze only elders carry, the kind that sees the blood in your eyes before you even shed it. One evening, he asked her, was it always like this? Her answer came slow, steady, like a hymn. Worse. But we didn't have cameras back then, only scars. She told him about playing in churches where the white congregation clapped for her, then locked the piano afterwards so she couldn't practice. About singing for crowds who loved the music but hated the mouth it came from. They want our brilliance, she said, but not our bodies, not our pain, just the shine. That night, Michael cried. Not the kind of tears people post online for sympathy. These were quiet, shaking, private. The kind that come when you realize the world doesn't want you to heal. It wants you to bleed beautifully. But it wasn't just about him anymore. Letters poured in, not from critics or scholars, but from forgotten people. A dishwasher in Kansas City, a retired janitor from the Bronx, a mother whose son had quit piano because he was the only black kid in the conservatory, Your music sounded like home, one wrote. Not where I live, but where I used to dream I could. Michael knew then. This wasn't about talent. It had never been. It was about reclamation, about standing on a stage not as entertainment but as testimony. So he did something no one expected. He announced the final performance. No tickets, no sponsors, just a time and a place, back at Station 52, where it all began. The same old upright piano, still slightly out of tune, still bearing the scars of city life. But this time, something would be different. Word spread, crowds formed, not influencers, not press, people, real people, many who had never been to a concert hall, many who had never been listened to in their lives. Megan filmed not for content, but for memory, for proof. Michael stepped out from the shadows, wearing his grandfather's coat and his mother's scarf. No lights, just the hum of the subway and the ache of the air. He sat at the piano and didn't play. Not yet. Instead, he spoke. This country loves to mourn us, he said. Loves our talent, our rhythm, our soul after we're gone. After we've been shot, silenced, scrubbed clean. I am not your tragedy. I am not your redemption arc. I am a man, a son, a grandson, and I play not to impress you, but to unbury something you tried to forget. Then he began, but it wasn't music in the traditional sense. What came from the keys wasn't classical. It wasn't jazz. It wasn't even definable. It was a sound made of every locked door, every backhanded compliment, every unpaid gig, every teacher who called him too emotional, every security guard who followed him in the store, every audition where the panel smiled then passed. It was not polished. It was primal. It shook the bones. People wept, not from pity, but from recognition, because it was their story too, hiding in different melodies. In the middle of his set, he paused and pulled a folded piece of paper from his coat. It was yellowed at the edges, his first rejection letter from the city's music school. He read it aloud. We regret to inform you that your application does not reflect the values and vision of our institution. Then he ripped it in half. Then again. Then he kept playing, until his fingers bled, until the keys stained red, until no one in that station could pretend they hadn't heard something holy. When he finished, he stood. No bow, no encore, just breathe, raw, shaking breath. The audience, if you could call them that, stood still, silent, as if clapping would ruin something sacred. And then, from the back, a voice rose. It was a boy, maybe 10, holding his mother's hand, brown skin, wide eyes. Can I play too? He asked. Michael looked at him, nodded, moved aside. The boy sat down, unsure, and pressed a key. It rang out, clear and trembling, the sound of a new beginning. Michael placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. This is yours now, he said, and walked away. He didn't need a label. He didn't need a headline. He had lit a fire that would outlive him. He had become not a note, but a chord passed down. One day, they would try to write him out again, package him, dilute him. But somewhere, someone would still be playing, not for applause, but for truth. A black man sits beside a broken piano in a subway station, playing a piece once reserved for white concert halls. The world stops to listen, but only after years of silence, rejection, and erasure. This isn't a story about viral talent. It's about what America refuses to hear until it becomes too loud to bury. If this story moves you, don't scroll past. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel, not for us, but for every voice still waiting in the dark to be heard. Thank you for staying until the final note. That's where the truth lives.